There we go.
There we are.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all to the Gerald Gardner room, where witchcraft happened before it was legal in Britain, and we're very proud of that as part of our long history. And we also have very dear friends and a very new friend who's getting older as we speak. Joe Machine's birthday.
Delightful.
Oh,
Yay!
Significant birthday.
That doesn't
It's just a
That's
birthday.
okay.
It's just a
Just a
Let's
birthday.
forget all that.
Yeah. So he has done simply spectacular images for what is not yet another oracle pack. This is something where the story goes back about 1,500 years. The manuscript is 1,000 years old, and it makes your spine tingle, the hair stand up on the back of your neck as you read it, as you hear it. John has done a very clever, interesting interpretation of it all now as well, and the book that accompanies the cards is clever, because even if you don't know the story, you will be beguiled by it, and you will have different sorts of people to help you with your practice. And these guys are, as you can see, the real deal. These are the ancient ones. No? Marvellous stuff. So, without more ado, because there is a table waiting. John Matthews.
Yes.
Thank you for those very embarrassing words. Thank you all for coming too. I had all these notes written about it, but I'm not going to worry about any of that because we're all friends here, aren't we? So, yeah, what can I say? Most of you, I suspect, do know about Beowulf. I've probably read it a few hundred times in one version or another, and so I don't really need to say anything about it. As you said, the manuscript, it exists in one manuscript only, which was just saved from the fire in the 18th century that burned off the cover, but none of the words, we hope. So it is about 1,000 years old. It was in the 11th century that it was written down, but the story itself goes back much further than that. It goes back probably as far as the 7th century or maybe even earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And according to a recent examination by an august professor from Gotland, it's even older than that, because he thinks it's actually about Gotland and that it was actually written there and not in Northumbria. So, be yourself. What else should I say? A lot of people assume, especially in the academic community, it's a Christian poem because it references God and Christ quite a lot. What you have to remember is that it was written down by monks. They copied it from somewhere else. They certainly didn't make it up. And in the process, just as they did with the Taliesin poems from Wales, they added in a few little nice, tidy invocations of Christ just to make sure everyone was happy in their Christian community.
At least it's survived.
It's
Yeah.
survived. And that's what I was going to say. We should be grateful to them for doing it, because otherwise it might have been forgotten forever.
Well, they took our calendar. Why not?
Well,
The
why
dates
not?
we
Why
managed
not?
to-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's just over 3,000 lines, so it's not short, and most people these days, I think, read it in one of the many translations. I use Seamus Heaney's, which I don't think is necessarily one of the best, but it's nice and clear. There's all sorts of new ones coming out. I just got one the other day, which is a feminist interpretation of Beowulf. Not an easy thing to do, and they did it very successfully as well. And because it's American, it starts. The poem famously begins with, hey.
Mm-hmm.
So in this, it's hey you.
Very
It's like,
American.
come into the bar, sit down.
Sorry.
So anyway, I've known the poem, of course, for a lot of my life and loved it, and loved the spectacular nature of it, the way that the characters are brought to life in a few lines. And I'd often thought about, wouldn't it make a tarot? And I realised there were just not enough characters to make, that many cards. Even using my imagination, it would have been difficult. So I thought, all right, let's do an oracle. And then I thought, right, who on earth could bring this to life? So that it wasn't my words or even the original words. It had to be an artist who could draw and paint and embody this material. And it just happens that at exactly the right time, I bought a book called Britannic Myths, which you had illustrated, Joe, and I went, that's the one. And it just happened that we knew some people who knew some other people who knew him, and so, you know, to cut a long story short, you know, he ended up agreeing to do it, and as I think you'll agree, made an absolutely amazing job of it, bringing all of these characters to life and making them, some of them so scary.
Yeah.
In fact, I think at least one was so scary, I actually said, I think we'll leave that one out. Slightly more,
Maybe the second edition, maybe.
See, I do Grendel's granny that keeps
Yeah,
writing.
right.
That's what a mother looks
Beowulf,
like.
Beowulf the Return.
I do want to see that one actually.
What's that? I wouldn't
Very
mind.
interesting, yeah.
Well, for those who don't know him, Joe is an internationally renowned artist. He is exhibited all over the world. He won the real Turner Prize, which is a completely different one from the one you've all heard of, and various other prizes over the years. And I've asked him if he will say a few words about his approach to the art.
Yeah, you'll be sorry.
You have to stand up and
Oh
say
God,
something.
not my back time.
Like I said.
Tell us about the art. Joe.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, what I'd like to say is a profound thank you to everybody, because without people coming, without people looking at the artwork, without people buying copies of the Oracle, who am I? Nobody. You know, I think this is something that we're all involved in together. But I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's turned up this evening. Thank you for the wonderful House of Schiffer Publishing. Absolutely fantastic, sterling job they've done in producing the Oracle. Absolutely fantastic. So I'm really, really, really happy with what they've done. It's been wonderful. You know, it's fantastic seeing it come from, you know, really reading John's work, his interpretation. So much was based upon that. Me turning it into the actual images and seeing it now, this wonderful. So they've done a fantastic job. John, I'm so happy to have worked with John. He's been an idol of mine who's actually become a friend. How often does that happen in life? I feel blessed. You know, I'm very, very happy to work with John as always. I'm very entrenched in myth in my life, which is why I think I made all of the paintings based on football hooligans and members of my family. There's no jest, there's no lie. That's who these people are. The monsters, the scarred faces, they are people that exist. They are people that I met. They are people that I grew up with in my life. So these are the people. Everything you can see really is drawn from my life. They're drawn from my own family and people that I met. So that's the only way that I could go on and do the work was to draw it from actual living people that are living, people that were dead, people I had photographs of. But I think I've spoken far too much. I really appreciate the myth and obviously the whole story of Beowulf, and I think probably my most heartfelt thanks goes out to whoever wrote it in the first place, whoever presented us with such a fantastic story and an archetype that's really come into his own, I think, in this era and is so widely recognised. And thank you to Geraldine for putting on the show. I really do appreciate it. But God bless you all. Thank you all for coming. My sincerest thanks.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
coming up to London. Coming to do the big smoke to do the which is fantastic. Yeah. So what media is it painted in?
Well, I mean, these ones are acrylic. I just went onto acrylic on paper for the Oracle deck. So, yes.
Well, I promised I'd say just a little bit about how it works, although I think it's a bit close to Newcastle in this stage. But it's basically it's a very simple thing. You have your question, you go and ask one of them what the answer is, and hopefully they help you find it. They can take you up and down the great world tree, Yggdrasil, into the roots, into those worlds, into the above place to Valhalla itself. They can take you all over into Nidhelm, all these different places that each have a different resonance for everyday life. And when you put those together with the cards, each of which comes with its own message, you have your answer. Of course, you can go much further if you're all experts as you are. You can just journey with them. I mean, who wouldn't want to go with this lady? Who wouldn't want to go with him? And you know what I love about this? And this is one of the reasons why I love Joe's stuff so much. This is not your average handsome hero. He has scars. Because you rightly said, of course he'd have scars, because he was in battle all the time.
Self-portrait.
I do see the similarities. So having done that part of the work, I still felt there was one little dimension missing. Wasn't sure what it was. And then I spoke to Kathleen, because whenever I do anything, I always talk to her about it, because if she doesn't like it, then I don't bother.
It doesn't go
well,
out of the
occasionally I ignore her, mostly. And she said, well, what about bringing in the Norns? Norns being the triplicity of goddesses from the Northern tradition, who look after the fates of humanity. So who better than to guide our steps on a journey to find whatever answer it is we need to whatever question we asked than the Norns. So we put the Norns in, which we put in black and white to make sure they were different from the rest. And then Kathleen wrote some kennings. Kennings being, if you don't know, kind of riddles that were written during the Anglo-Saxon period.
It's like the cryptic crossword, only much less interpreted.
Exactly. So she wrote some wonderful kennings, and she's going to read one for us.
So this isn't the kind of oracle where it says, eat carrots and pray facing west on Fridays. It doesn't say things like that. So John's arranged this so that cards that you choose can be heroes and companions, those who come with you. They can also be challengers who challenge you, because we all need friends who ask us good questions, good searching questions. Why are you doing things that way? For God's sake, when are you going to stop wearing that hat? And things like that. But anyway, so these also sort of come into the meaning, if you will, but it's still for you to decide what it means. So this is the weaving of the Norns for Grendel's mum. And Grendel's mum is even more scary than Grendel. So if you choose her as a companion or hero, then this is what she says. Hideous of aspect, the womb of outpouring, the birther of brave ones who leap to the fray, guardian of giant home, treasures bestowing, bringer of mystery, savager of prey. Cling to the cauldron of life and redemption when judgment and vengeance are stirred among men. So that's the companion part. And if you want her as a challenger, she might say to you, if loss be your keeper, revenge be your reaper. You hasten your weird to the stretch of your thread. The one who destroys to make good his insulting, unweaves his own making in wreckage of dread. Temper the conflict, let truce be your master. Peace weaver be known as among your own kin. So it's like, which is the good and the bad answer of those? It's not exactly clear.
So
It is.
So that adds a wonderful extra layer to the whole process. And I'm just looking here for 1 minute, because I think, interesting enough, in the book and on the cards we have a different Grendel's mother.
Oh yes.
To the one that's on the wall there, because that was the one we all said, too scary. So there you are, you're getting a first look
Yes,
at
that's
the
great.
original
That's
version.
fantastic.
You can of course buy the originals as well as the deck.
Yes.
Yes.
And I believe there might be prints as well.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we've kept you from all the goodies and the, the wine, etc. But before we all go away in different places, is what we try and give you for a moment, just a feeling of what it might be like to sit in one of the great halls, Heorot, as it is in the poem, and listen for a moment to one of the skalds actually saying the words. Which I just realised I don't have. Just a
Oh,
minute.
well, if you want to
Sorry,
hold it
no,
there,
no,
so
no,
I
I've
can
got
see
them.
it.
Sorry, I've got them here. That's all right. So, without further ado, as they say,
I'm good to go.
Ho! To Skald an heir was born, a son in his halls whom heaven sent to favour the folk, feeling their woe that erst they had lacked an earl for leader so long a while. The Lord endowed him, the wielder of wonder, with world's renown. Famed was this Beowulf, far flew the boast of him, son of Skuld in the Scandian lands. So that's the beginning, and then we move to Beowulf himself. My thought, when my warriors and I set to sea and sailed in our ship, is that I would toil for the good of your people, in full, or battling fall to fate within the monster's strong grasp. I am fixed to do a warrior's bold feat, or finish the days of my life here in the hall of a kin. There's two more, hang on. Next, Shield Chiefson was Beowulf's father, and a very famous hero in his own right. Lo, we Speardanes in days of yore, we have heard of a great king, how that strong king won honour and fame. Of Shield Chiefson among scathing host, many mead seats stole, owing the Jarl. Though first his name was unknown, fate gifted him mighty fame under the heavens. Honour earned until each follower over the whale road came, gave kinship and tribute to a good king. And last of all, one of the cards on it has the great sword that is featured in the poem. It's called Hrunting. And so this is the voice of the sword, if you like, singing to you for the first time. When mighty help was wanted, then he in need did lend that hilted sword, Hrunting named. This was an ancient treasure, foremost edge of iron, venom to feuds. Never absent from battle, never wandered or untrue, to any man whose life it guarded, the footsteps of fate to dare and conquer, a friend's hall or far battlefield. It would not be its first journey into the world, another heroic deed destined to do.
Okay.
And one last thing, because I can't be here, my wonderful co-author,
Yes.
Virginia Chandler, who's in the States and couldn't make it over, she did that translation, by the way, and she also retells the whole of the poem in her own words in the book, which is quite magical in itself. So if you don't want to plough through 3,000 lines of Anglo-Saxon verse, you know where to come.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much
Very
for
good.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So please meet and mingle.